just having memories about my practice, and it was all just kind of coming together. And I don't know that that means anything in particular. I know we have a tendency to find meaning in patterns. You might be doing a crossword puzzle, and then that last word, you go, oh, it's crow. It's crow. The last word is crow. And you just, you're done with the crossword puzzle. And then maybe an hour later, you see something descend behind your house, this giant thing. You have no idea what it is. And you run around to look what's in your front yard, and there's a crow sitting there. And you go, it's a crow. And then you maybe 2 hours later, a friend sends you a poem and said, I think you might like this. And a crow is really an important image in the poem. And then you start to go, okay, this is too weird. And our pattern making minds then make some kind of meaning of it where maybe there is, maybe there isn't, but it's probably just as likely that what we've done is we've opened the door just to notice all the crows that show up in our life. And if you've noticed things that show up and don't show up in your life, you'll also notice that they come in spurts for whatever reason. So when I worked at a bookstore for a while, I remember that my manager, he said, you've never done retail before? And I said, no. And he said, well, there's going to be this thing. He said, it's going to happen right before closing. It wasn't every night, but it would just happen. It would be 2 minutes before the store to close, and maybe 5 minutes. And it will be as if a bus just let out a group of people who've come here to shop. And he's right. You'd be sitting there in this empty store for hours. And then you'd be like, well, it's getting to be close. So maybe I should start ringing the cash register out. And you shouldn't do it because suddenly like 6, 7 people would just sort of wander into the store, and you'd have to tell them politely, we are closing at 10. So that's what, when we start noticing these patterns, really what we're doing is we're just becoming open to what it is that's available to us, what's there, and we just notice it. And again, we might make patterns out of it. And so when I was working on my update letter, writing about practice period, which I'll talk about a little bit in my talk, it just sort of resonated with stuff I was reading to prepare for the Bendoa class that I'll be teaching. And Bendoa is a writing by a 13th century Japanese teacher who's very important to her lineage. And it's really a tremendous writing of his. Going back over it again, I'm a little surprised at how accessible it is, because my memory when I first read it was that it was really like far out. It does have a passage in it that's pretty incredible. We'll probably spend some time in the class talking about. And then we're reading Diamond Katagiri's Returning to Silence in a study group, and some things that came up in there sort of came to mind. And then Mary gave a nice talk last Wednesday night about not judging your own practice. So she's looking at one of the components of a meditation practice. And then in my own memories of practice just kind of came up. So this talk is going to be a little bit like that. There's going to be a little bit of everything. And I'm hoping that for me, it just all resonated when it was encountering one another. I'm hoping it does for you too. So I want to start with practice period, because that's sort of what seemed to have been the trigger for me thinking about putting this talk together. And I discussed it. If you've read the update letter, you've probably already read me talk about it, but just in case you haven't, I thought I would read to you our description of what practice period is from our website. Practice period allows students for a designated period of time. And just to interrupt real quickly, that designated period of time, it's starting February 25th and it goes through May 12th. So it's starting at 3 weeks. Practice period allows students for a designated period of time to take up Buddhist practice more intensively than they usually might. Because it is done with other Zen students, it can also foster a sense of community important to practicing Buddhism. Whether you are a beginning student or one with more experience, practice period can deepen one's practice. And so when I was writing my update letter, I just was reminded what a great opportunity practice period is. I mean, it's really a pretty tremendous opportunity. It's an easy way for one to realize that one can do what you don't think you can do. It's a very easy way to realize that. And I think particularly when I took a practice period, I took it up because there was this thing that was on the calendars called sesshin, which were these meditation retreats. It'd be like 2, 3, and 5 days long. And when I first started sitting, I had some difficulties finding a sitting posture that didn't cause me excruciating pain within about 15 minutes into my sit. Or if it didn't cause pain, one of my legs would go numb. I had problems finding something. And so I thought, a whole weekend of that? No, thank you. I'm not going to do that at all. And it just seemed impossible to me. It was just something I couldn't do. And I actually came to one of the half-day meditations that we offer here. And that was an experience. I'll put it that way. It was an experience. And when I left, I remember telling a friend of mine, I said, well, I sat in meditation this morning from 8 until noon, which isn't exactly right, but it's close enough. And she was kind of startled by that. And she said, well, how'd it go? And I said, I experienced every emotion I've ever experienced in my life in that 4 hours that I sat. So again, sesshin seemed so impossible to me. I just thought, I don't know that I can do this. Then I heard about this thing called practice period. And practice period, you make some practice commitments, and one of them is to sit sesshin. And I thought, I know what I'm going to do. It'll be like ripping off a Band-Aid rather than slowly peeling it off, or leaping into the cold lake on a hot summer day rather than painfully wading into the ice cold water. And I thought, I'll just sign up for practice period and then I'll have to do sesshin. And that's precisely what happened. I had to do sesshin. And I did it. And it was something I didn't think I could possibly do. And I've done so many sessions now, I can't even count how many I've done. I also didn't think at that time, I really struggled with anxiety. So if I came into the meditation hall, you know how the cushions are set up around the room, I would look and see where absolutely nobody was sitting, so that I would sit in that spot. So I'd find the most remote spot in the meditation hall, and that's where I would sit. And I did it in part because I was so self-conscious. I was just sure that what I was doing was not only wrong, but it was going to be incredibly disruptive. I have no idea what I thought I was doing. I just thought, if I have to move, my legs are in such pain and I have to, I'm going to be bothering people. And I just want to be left to my own devices. And yet I knew somehow that coming to a meditation hall, and at that time I was doing it 2 times a week, that doing that was important. So I would come, but then I would sit as far away as possible. And one little side note about that is that when I first started practicing here, not only was I really working with some anxiety issues, but I also had a hearing condition that left me almost completely deaf in one ear. I've had surgery done on it now, and it's much better. And so I couldn't really hear a lot. People probably remember me sitting at talks doing this because I couldn't hear, and I had a hearing aid, but it didn't really. I could go into that. Maybe I will just a second. It was a hearing aid. It had adjustable volume on it. And the audiologist said, well, because of your hearing condition, most people when they hear a really loud sound, you have a little muscle in your ear and it contracts. And it'll just like, if it was going to damage your ear, your inner ear, it'll just close out. You don't have that. You've got bone material where there should be stuff like that. And so it's just going to stay open. So what I want you to do is raise your hand when it really hurts. And I don't know about you, but to me, it just kept getting louder and louder and louder. And I thought, I don't even know how, it wasn't hurting, but I was like, I don't know how it could possibly get any louder than this. And the prospect of this getting so loud, it's actually going to hurt me. I just raised my hand at some point. But what that meant was that my hearing aid wasn't really adjusted properly. And so I didn't really wear the hearing aid because it really had limited usage. I could use it in certain circumstances. So anyhow, I was sitting in my usual away from everybody else position in the Zendo. And at some point they heard what sounded like rustling to me. And rustling probably would mean like a marching band just went by for most people. But I just sort of heard rustling and I thought, oh, people must be fluffing up their cushions right now. So I guess I didn't hear the bells ring, and that's a frequent thing. The tinnitus that I have seems to match. If people are softly tapping bells, I can't hear the bells sometimes, so I didn't hear the bell, but I hear people getting up. And I fluffed my cushion up, I turned around, and what I saw was the last person walking out of the room. So anyhow, that was my initial practice here. And so I didn't come here often, but practice period also, because it asks you to sit so many times a week at the meditation hall, provided me an opportunity to sit here more often and to get a little bit more comfortable sitting with other people. And then the other thing that practice period, I think, does, and it's something that's in our description online, is it strengthens the sense of Sangha. Sangha is our community that practices together. It strengthens that sense. You sit with people in practice period, and you see them, first of all, on Sunday mornings. There's a little study group that we do before the Sunday programming. And so you see who everybody in the practice period is, and you are going through a teaching together, a text. And then you see those people as you start coming to the meditation hall. You see them sitting around, you see them in classes, and you see them on the Sunday mornings again. And so it really strengthens a sense of people coming together and practicing. And at the same time, you too are strengthening that community just by being here, because they also see you. And people who aren't in practice period see you sitting. And you see people who aren't in practice period sitting. So it's this thing I'm talking about right now is going to be a very important part of my talk. So this sense of Sangha is strengthened, and you strengthen the Sangha at the same time. Now, as I was writing today's talk, I debated whether to mention this or not, but I think I will, just because I don't know if people are aware of this. But for some reason, as great an opportunity as practice period is here at Dharma Field, for some reason, people aren't taking advantage of the opportunity. So in the last few years, we've had one person locally sitting our practice periods, just one person. And I don't want to make it sound like practice period is about numbers, and I don't want to sound like I'm scolding anybody, because it's not about the numbers. You know, we do an online component of practice period as well. And I've gotten feedback from the one person and the people online, and they express gratitude for having this opportunity. It's just, I just am unsure why people aren't taking advantage of the opportunity. So I just wanted to make sure you know that it's available, that this opportunity is available, and what the tenor of it is, what the flavor of it is. And that's kind of what my talk is, this confluence of things is about. When Mary gave her talk on not judging one's meditation practice, you know, she went through the three components of meditation. That if you take meditation instruction here, those who are taking up this practice, we help them to see if you're going to keep a meditation practice going, here are three things that we recommend. One is you keep a regular meditation practice, which doesn't mean I'll 3 times this week, sometime I'll do a meditation practice. It's actually more rigorous than that. So it's picking a day, picking a time, picking a duration, and sticking with that plan. And that's what it is. So there's that regularity. The second is sitting with others. That's what I'll talk about in a second. And then the third one is not judging your practice. And those are all very important components to keeping a meditation practice going. And this sitting with others, what happens when you sit with others, beyond what I've already told you, this was the thing that kind of surprised me, is first of all, remember, I had anxiety. So when I would come into a meditation hall, what I encountered in pretty bold terms, I should tell you, I suffered from anxiety my whole life and only had somebody kind of help me see what I was experiencing in my life when I was 42 years old. And you might go, well, how unself-aware can you be? I just knew that I was doing weird things, you know, and I would tell friends, they're just like, you know, when I called the store the other day to ask them if they carried, I don't know, I'll just say Captain Crunch. I doubt it was Captain Crunch, but something that, you know, that they would have on their shelf. I said, it took me like a half an hour to kind of work through what the dialogue I was going to have with the star clerk was going to be. And he just went, why on earth did you do that? And that's the kind of responses I would get from people when I would talk to them about things. They had no way of talking about it. So nobody said, oh, Steve, you have anxiety. They just said, why would you do that? That's such a goofy thing. And I say, I have no idea. So I was in my 40s when somebody finally said, that's anxiety. And so when I would come into the meditation hall, I would face that. That would be one thing that I would taste very clearly was, oh, here's that thing that I experienced. Of course, it had a different look to it than other situations I would be in where it would show up, but there would be. That's why I would sit in the far end. You know, I'd still nurse it. It was still something I was very familiar that I would indulge this thing, my friend, that was anxiety. But I would see it when I would come to the meditation. I'll just be right there, crystal clear. And I started realizing how much of that was self-consciousness. It was about me. I would walk into a room and I'd construct the entire situation I was walking into. It'd be about me and what I was going to do. I don't know what I thought was going to happen, but it was just always about me. So I started to see as I sat regularly and had a look at that anxiety, that this was really just about me, 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 you know, and I started to let go of that as I was meditating. And it was interesting to let go of that while I thought I was in the grips of it. I didn't think I could do it, and there I was doing it. And the other thing was, and this is something that took me a little bit longer to realize this is what's going on. You know, one of the reasons I sat in the corner was to nurse my anxiety, but another reason I did it is I did not want to bother other people in the meditation hall. I really didn't want to do that. I didn't want them to experience my anxiety. I was okay experiencing that myself. So I would do that to not bother other people's practice. In other words, I was taking care of other people in the room. And that's one of the things you discover when you sit with others, is that you are taking care of everyone who's sitting in that room. And we express that if you come and sit in our formal sittings. When you come in, you bow to your cushion, which is sort of a greeting expression of gratitude. It's just hello, really, to your cushion, but to the whole universe is showing up as cushion. And then we turn around and we express our gratitude to everyone who's sitting with us. We're aware there are these people sitting with us, and we take care of their practice. So there's this element to sitting with others that is actually part of the practice. It's part of everyday life. But it's something that you really start to taste when you sit with others, which is the nature of this experience is not me, 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 right? So it shows up in the dropping away of that me. It shows up in taking care of others naturally. It just happens naturally. I don't have to do much thinking about it. And so while I was thinking about all this stuff, I was reminded of a story that I liked, and I think I encountered it in one of the books I was talking about. Though I tried to find it and I couldn't. But this is a story that you might know, and it's a story that I took the title of this talk from. It's called Buddha Picks Up a Flower. And it's one of the koans in the Mumonkan, or the Gateless Gate. And it goes like this. In ancient times, at the assembly on Spiritual Mountain, Buddha picked up a flower and showed it to the crowd. Everyone was silent except for the saint Kashyapa, who broke out in a smile. Buddha said, I have the treasury of the eye of truth, the ineffable mind of nirvana, the most subtle teachings on the formlessness of the form of reality. It is not defined in words, but is specially transmitted outside of doctrine. I entrust it to Kashyapa, the elder. So I just want to look at those. Buddha said, I have the treasury, right? So the richness, the riches of the eye of truth. That's one of those interesting phrases. We might think the eye of truth is an eye that can see truth, can recognize truth. I think the eye of truth is an eye that when it looks out, truth is seen. It doesn't see truth, but everything that eye sees is truth. It realizes that everything it sees is truth. The ineffable mind of nirvana, ineffable is unspeakable. You can't conceptualize it. You can't put boundaries around it. You can't describe it. This is nirvana. This is release from our craving, from our suffering. The most subtle teachings on the formlessness of the form of reality. The most subtle teachings. Some of you may have encountered a teaching about the formlessness of form in the Heart Sutra. That's where I first remember encountering it, because we recite it. And we recite, form is not, form is emptiness, emptiness is form. That which is emptiness is, that which is form is emptiness, that which is emptiness is form, or is form. So yeah, I encountered that teaching, and I remember thinking at the time, I have no idea what that means, but it sounds right. I don't know that I really put it that way, but it really spoke to me. This formlessness of form is not just some bizarre teaching, that you encounter in the Heart Sutra and go, well, I don't really know what it means, but it means something. As you start to pay attention, this is the flavor of experience, the formlessness of form. This is the quality of existence, to paraphrase my class, which, by the way, the final class of quality of existence will be this Wednesday, and I apologize for, I guess there's nothing I could have done about it. I didn't feel well, let's just put it that way, on Tuesday, so. But this subtle teaching then, this most subtle teaching, this isn't something that will be put into words. This isn't something that somebody can show you. This is something that can only be experienced. And so Buddha says it is not defined in words, but specially transmitted outside of doctrine. And this particular story, we have Kashyapa. It's a strange story if you first, encounter these kinds of teachings. You've got, this is the kind of thing I would read and then go, Buddha holds up a flower and a guy smiles, and then Buddha says, I entrust him with all my teachings. And you just go, I don't understand that at all. But what's happening there is, this is the way I ended up putting it. I tried putting it in a variety of ways, and I have this in quotation mark. Maha Kashyapa, he gets it. He gets it. So I have that in quotation marks because there's nothing that he gets. And he realizes that. And in realizing that, he realizes Dharma, which is the truth of reality. Another way to think of it. So I told you I was reading all this stuff. I'm reading right now Gusho Nichijima, one of a great 20th century Japanese Zen teacher. I'm reading his commentary on the Bendoa, on that 13th century text I was talking about earlier. And he uses a phrase that's something like that we receive and use Dharma. And I kind of rephrase that a little bit as we receive and express Dharma. It's the same sort of thing for me anyhow. So Mahakashyapa, he gets it because he receives and expresses Dharma. He receives and expresses Dharma not in that he receives and expresses Dharma, but that he receives and expresses Dharma, we'll say, simultaneously. This is how he gets it. What Mahakashyapa does is this. It's this. It's this. That is what is happening in this story. And this is said to be the first mind-to-mind transmission of the teachings, also known as Dharma transmission. And people hear Dharma transmission, then they think, oh, there's something called Dharma, and it's being transmitted often from teacher, in this case, Buddha, to student, Kashyapa. But really, Dharma transmission is the realization, this is the way that I've started thinking of it, that Dharma is always being transmitted. In other words, it's always expressing. Dharma is always being transmitted, always being expressed to one with the eye of truth. As you have the eye of truth, you look. Everywhere you look, Dharma is being transmitted. Dharma is being expressed. And this teaching, as they say, is not contained in the sutras or talks. It comes from this receiving Dharma and expressing Dharma. This is meditation practice. Receiving Dharma, expressing Dharma simultaneously. This is sitting with others. This is sitting with others. This is them taking care, the others taking care of your practice, you taking care of their practice, and you realize that those seemingly separate practices aren't separate. It's just practice. And that's practice, period, is engaging in that. It's committing to that. In Returning to Silence, Katagiri wrote a passage that I thought was very, very rich. There's lots. It's a rich book. If you haven't read it, I would recommend it. If it doesn't make any sense to you, that's okay. When I first read it, I had no idea what I read. I read it and I went, well, that was for somebody other than me. And then I took a study group here at Dharma Field many years ago, and it just opened up like a flower. And part of that was because of my meditation practice, because I could see what the teachings were pointing to more clearly just from having done the things I talked to, very mundane things. But Katagiri writes, he says, only when you become the practice whose mind is closely in accord with enlightenment can you follow, can you be in accord with the teacher's teaching. It is not something difficult. You may think that you are not able to follow because you are deluded, but I don't think so. Buddhist practice starts from, you are Buddha. It's not something specific that you reach. You are already Buddha. Buddha means you don't understand Buddha. Buddha means complete digestion, nothing left. And this can be difficult for us. Now, you probably noticed what just happened there. Katagiri says it is not something difficult. And yet, this practice that he just described, it can be difficult for us. And that is the nature of reality. It's not difficult, but it can be difficult for us. And one reason why is that we don't see with the eye of truth. And it seems to us, the world is telling us, you are not Buddha, you are not Buddha, you are not Buddha, you are not Buddha, you are not Buddha. You are Aisha. You are a drill press operator. You are wrong. You are a pencil. You are not a pencil. And those last two might seem a little strange. It's something else who we are. But the world is always telling us, here are things, there you are, when we don't see with the eye of truth. In practice period, however, you're together with everyone who is taking up the practice, whose mind is closely in accord with enlightenment. And that is start practice. That's Zazen. Everyone who comes here is doing that. Everyone who comes here, when you sit to meditate, is taking up the practice whose mind is closely in accord with enlightenment. And you might say, au contraire, Steve. I was sitting on my meditation cushion, and I can assure you that I was not engaged in the practice whose mind is closely in accord with enlightenment. But what are you doing? When you see that that's the case, when you realize that you're lost in thought, now you see what's showing up, lost in thought. And when you do that, here you are. And here you are doing what exactly? What exactly are you doing? I bet you'd be a little hard pressed. You'd start fumbling through all the things you've heard teachers say about what it is you're doing. Oh, I'm watching my mind, or whatever you're doing. All you're doing is you're coming back to this. That's it. You're just sitting. You're realizing what it is that's actually taking place right now. And that might be being lost in thought. You catch yourself lost in thought. Rarely do you continue that same train of thought. You might, and it stops, and there might be another one. You pick that one up, you start running with that. But when you come to this meditation hall, that's it. You're engaging in this practice. This practice can't be done right or wrong. It's just the intention to be back here, to live this moment. And so when you are sitting meditation, it's really, this is something you'll hear, and this is something somebody might say, well, when I'm sitting meditation, I'm practicing an action without intention. But that's really what you're doing. It might be that you came here to wake up, that you decided, yeah, I want enlightenment. I didn't even really know what enlightenment was. So when I came here, it wasn't because of that. I started hearing about it. Then I started getting intrigued. And I said, with that enlightenment thing, that doesn't sound too bad. Maybe I'll try that. But I do hear them say, don't try to do that. So I'm not gonna be shooting for enlightenment. You know what I mean? And then, but the thing about practice period that makes it great is that it is, first of all, it's our daily life, but it shows up now when we sit zazen in this form. That's a sort of a gesture, that's this formal gesture of just being here. I mean, it's what we are in our daily life as well. We just have all kinds of ideas we layer on top of it. But with practice period, in addition to that, you have this extra component to it. That means that if you take into the meditation hall, yeah, I'm not really sitting to wake up. If you're bringing that into the meditation hall, then you are going to let it go. You're going to let it go because you know what's going to happen. You have practice period goes on for 3 months. And when you keep not waking up, when you keep getting there and going, well, where's that samadhi, Jajuyu samadhi that Dogen talks about? Where's this? How come this isn't happening? You let it go and you just bring yourself back. You just do. It's what happens in Sesshin. If you sit a meditation retreat, one of the things you find is you just let it go. All the things that you're bringing, you'll carry them around for a while probably, and it's going to keep banging you on your mental shins, and then finally you're going to be like, I'm done. I'm not going to, this is what I used to do when I would sit. I would go, all right, so we had 3 sittings already in the morning, and then before lunch we have a sitting and then the talk, and then there are these 2 sittings, and those are very, I don't know if you hear what I'm doing, but I would calculate the whole Sesshin schedule. I couldn't even sit Sesshin without looking at the schedule in advance and memorizing it. So I sat down and I memorized the whole thing. I said, okay, that's what we're going to be doing. And when you sit Sesshin, as you keep doing it, you let that go. You just let that go. And practice period, the same thing. You're coming in here, you have ideas about it. One thing you know is what the practice is. You sit on a cushion and you just pay attention. Notice your breath. That's it. So when you're doing it for 3 months, all the other stuff, you just kind of go, okay, I'm just doing this. I'm going to just sit. And so now you're doing that practice that is a practice whose mind is closely in accord with enlightenment. And I would say you're doing it, whether you think you're doing it or not. So when you practice with others, and you all sit with the sitting that is closely in accord with enlightenment. You bow with a bowing that is closely in accord with enlightenment. You eating in a way that's closely in accord with enlightenment. You work in a way that's closely in accord with enlightenment. And what is that? You sit to sit, you bow to bow, you walk to walk, you eat to eat, you work to work. So it's not any of these activities in and of themselves. It's doing them from the treasury of the eye of truth, from the ineffable mind of nirvana, from the most subtle of teachings on the formlessness of the form of reality. When we take up this practice, we receive the Dharma, we express the Dharma. And that may sound like something special, but it is what we do every moment. We receive the Dharma, we express the Dharma, but we overlook it. Because we don't believe, we don't have to believe But when we hear somebody like Katagiri saying, Buddhist practice starts from you are Buddha, we don't really hear it. So we don't begin from Buddha. We do. We just don't think we're beginning from Buddha. We don't realize that we're receiving and expressing the Dharma. And even that is a coarse way of putting it. Really what's happening is Dharma is us. We realize Dharma is us. But what I liked about received and expressing the Dharma is it helps us to see that interconnectedness that is practicing with others, that is sitting and studying with others. And that is the others support you, and you are supporting the others as you take up this practice. It just happens. And if you pay attention, you'll realize no others, no self, just this practice. Intermutual penetration. And this can't be known. And you can say, okay, I get what Steve's talking about. No, you can't know this that way. It really requires you just do it. You just do it. And I know that this is a challenge for our members on Zoom to sit with others. I've spoken with some of you online about this, and I know it's a challenge. And that's just where your practice is right now. But I think I've told almost everyone I've talked to on Zoom about that. Well, when you can, sit with others. Do that when you can. If somebody's offering a meditation retreat and it's not too far away, let's go sit. Keep that meditation practice going at home, but try to make sitting with others. Maybe invite a friend. Maybe try to get a few people. I know there are some of our Zoom followers actually live in proximity, and they sit together sometimes to see if you can do that. Because we can't know this any other way than just to experience. And to experience it is to not isolate yourself. This practice isn't about isolation. This practice is about this experience, about this world. Remember, Katagiri tells us Buddha means you don't understand Buddha. You don't understand Buddha. Buddha means complete digestion, nothing left. That's receiving and expressing the Dharma simultaneously. Complete digestion, nothing left. This is Kashyapa when he smiled. Sitting together, meditating together, taking up sesshin or practice period, this becomes clear to us as it can in almost no other way. It is holding up the flower. It is smiling. Well, that's my talk. I don't know if people have comments or questions.
Yeah, it seems like whenever I come over here, I always get in this conversation. But it's the difference between thought and attachment to thought. So like I had this dream, I was with my satchel, and I do a lot of reading and writing on it. I actually just sent a wild email proving that there could be no hell to it. Probably the world's greatest Dante scholar at Yale Divinity School. Probably won't answer it, but anyway, so and this was on grounds of emptiness. So there's a lot of thought in that. And so I'm going into this, I'm with this satchel that I carry around, and I'm a lawyer also, and there's a lot of thought in that. And then I'm going into the world's worst crack house, opium den. It's like, well, I'm gonna leave my satchel on outside before I go into the opium den. And then boom, it didn't. And then the dream ended. But the thought is that whatever this hell is that I'm going into is not, well, I mean, there's a lot of the relationship between my satchel thought and the hell that I'm going into. I mean, is the crack house my satchel? Or in fact, can't I get into in fact, the great thing to do is to bring the satchel into the crack house, because then I can't get into it. But anyway, thought is ubiquitous, and it can be great, and it can be wonderful. And you were at that bookstore. So the idea would be this weird relationship between all thought is good and all thought is bad. All these relationships between thought, because we can't really even understand how the crack house is bad without doing some thinking.
Yeah, thought is thought,
Yeah.
not good or bad. It just isn't it. So when I said Kashyapa got it, it didn't have anything to do with thinking. So thought is thought. There's nothing, there's nothing bad with thinking.
Yeah.
But what it is that Kashyapa realized, this receiving of the Dharma and the using of the Dharma is not dependent on words. You could be expressing words as you're receiving the Dharma and expressing the Dharma. Could involve words, but words are not going to help you to unlock or open the eye of truth.
But it would not be dependent on not words, because not words are not going to help you open. I mean, in the sense that you can't, there's not this word-free realm that is nirvana. Nirvana is the realm which includes words and all other things.
It is words that come from the eye of truth, that come from silence, right? In other words, we're not going to make a dichotomy between words and not words. We walk a middle way. And so there are words, but what we usually do is we take words to mean, to use terminology we use here at Dharma Food, like ultimate truth. But we think that words express the truth. They can't. They just can't do that. So as long as we recognize that, I love words. I not only, I don't know what bookstore you're talking about, but I go to bookstores all the time. I was just thinking about what a treat it was. I had been in London and I had planned to do one thing and I ended up doing something completely different. And the thing that I ended up doing is completely different. I didn't want to do. I wanted to do this other thing. But this friend took me to this neighborhood in London. This was 30 years ago, Camden Town. And he said, "Oh, you're going to like it." And I was like, "Yeah, but I want to go to the thing with Derek Jarman. I don't want to go to the. So we went to Camden Town anyhow, and I ended up in this bookstore. And it was like a bookstore where they said, "We're going to curate all of these books for this guy that's coming into the store next." I walked into the bookstore and I just went, "Oh my God, I want to buy every one of these books." It was just such an incredible thing. And by the way, that bookstore is in the movie Happy Go Lucky, if you've ever seen that. That's where Sally Hawkins is. It's that bookstore no longer exists, which kind of breaks my heart. But anyway, I love thought and I love books and all of that. But I understand what it is they're doing and what it is they're not doing. And that's what I think we need to do.
Well, let me propose this. The Nirvana includes that bookstore. And it also includes the worst porn seller you've ever encountered or haven't.
We'd say reality.
Yeah,
Yeah.
all of you.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Right. We throw none of it away. So it's not no words. Words are bad. Yeah, that's absolutely right. But words don't contain it all, but they do express it. You know what I mean? They express it in the same way that anything expresses totality. Again, with the eye of truth, you can see Dharma received, Dharma expressed, or Dharma received using Dharma, right? So it's everything is like that. But no particular thing is the thing itself, right? So, yeah, so thank you for sharing. And I know I asked you your name recently and I've already forgotten it.
Okay, it's Brian.
Brian.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you for your talk. I just wanted to share very briefly on the idea of not judging your practice, just an experience that I had early in my practice because it was directly related to that and it was funny and profound. So it was before I had even started sitting with others. I also was very anxious about the possibility of sitting with others and didn't think I could do it. So I practiced at home, working up like 2 minutes, 4 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes. And I was in this 5-minute stage and I was doing this little sit. I've been doing it for a couple of months and I'm sitting and, I'm sitting in a Zen posture. It's fine. And I hear my mind say, man, you suck at this. And I had enough little distance from that thought, which came through, you're terrible at this, to realize my mind was telling me, man, you're so terrible. You don't even know how to do nothing. Because I was literally doing nothing and I was doing a great job of it. But my mind was like, you're such a loser. You can't do nothing. And, it just made me realize that, for me, there's this voice that hates me and that voice is not me. And that voice is not speaking the truth. Yeah. And so that was all about, that voice was judging my practice. And when I saw that voice was not real, it was a pretty liberating experience. And it only happened because I was in this space of observing my thoughts in a Zen practice. Again, it was very early, but it was very profound. So I thought I'd share that.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. Yeah, that's exactly right. So we have those little voices. And then we know they're there, kind of, but it was when you really face them, when you really see them, that you can realize what's going on. But when you don't, when they're just the narrative that's in the background, then it's the narrative. Then it's like, oh, I know, I've been watching the latest season of Fargo. And all of a sudden, one episode was narrated. There's like a guy, and he was telling us what was going. And somebody said, "Is that narrator Jason Schwartzman?" And then, indeed, it was Jason Schwartzman. But it's like having a narrator in the film of your life that's just kind of telling everybody, "Well, this is what's going on," and everybody's actually you, but you're not aware of it. So being able to finally hear that, see that, yeah, that's what our practice is. Thanks for sharing. Yeah, Matt.
The leg pain, I was interested in that. I have never been able to sit cross-legged, even when I was a kid.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering if over time, if I maybe push it where the muscles get a little more limber.
What was that?
Will the muscles or the joints get a little more limber over time, and does it get easier?
Yeah,
it seems like you're okay with it now.
Yeah, well, they will, depending on what's going on, but for me, I, first of all, was, Steve actually taught me how to do this, but I was just sitting on a cushion in a way that, when I first started, I was pinching a nerve in my butt. So that was causing the numbness. And, I think to avoid that, I was just sitting on all kinds of weird things. Like I'd take 2 of those Zafus and pile them up on top of one another, which I don't even know how I sat on that. I do remember kind of sliding off. But now that I sit like this, which again seemed impossible, yeah, it took a little bit of time for that to kind of feel less painful. But yeah, I kind of sit through it. And now I'm getting older, it's starting to, pain's starting to come back in different ways. So, your body's going to tell you what you need to do to take care of it. So it may be, depending on what's going on with your body, it may be, it just ain't going to go anywhere. Yeah. I could never, as a kid, I could never touch my toes to save my life. And you'd have those gym teachers, I always had a little bit of a paunch on me. Come on, fatty, touch your toes. You're just like, I'm trying really hard. Yeah.
We would all sit, they called it Indian style when we were kids. In kindergarten, I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
My joints just won't. They're not that flexible.
Yeah, do what they are telling you to do, but sometimes it's okay to kind of push against them a little bit and just to see, well, are they going to be okay if I do this for a while? Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. All right, thank you.